The President of the European Council and the European Commission talked up closening ties and their bid to ratify the CETA free trade agreement with Ottawa.
They're turning to another partner, also targeted by Trump's tariffs, an ally on the other side of the Atlantic.
Significant shift. Europe has turned away from traditional American natural gas supplies and is increasingly looking to Canada for energy.
Canada just delivered a massive blow to the United States energy sector, and the effects are already sending shockwaves through the global market. The United States relied on its liquefied natural gas exports to dominate global energy trade, especially after stepping in to replace Russian gas supplies to Europe. But that dominance is now under serious threat. Canada has rapidly expanded its role as a more stable and affordable energy partner, and European nations are taking notice. The shocking reality is that this move isn't just about natural gas. Canada is now positioned to become a leading energy supplier, with oil, gas, and even critical minerals for electric vehicle batteries flowing to Europe and Asia instead of the United States. So what happens to America's energy now, in and for Trump's remaining years in office?
Basing on the time. Chrystia Freeland's going to put a list together. We're going to put our list together, and I'm sure the other provinces will as well. But we will go to the full extent, depending how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State, and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen, but my number one job is to protect Ontario, Ontarians and Canadians as a whole, since we're the largest province. Yeah. On the gear, they're going to enhance gear, get more border patrol, more sniffer dogs, if you want to call them that, patrol dogs.
The United States and Canada have always enjoyed a robust and mutually beneficial energy partnership. Canada's vast reserves of oil, natural gas, and other energy resources have been instrumental in powering American industries and homes, solidifying Canada's position as the United States' most significant energy supplier. However, recent geopolitical developments, particularly the imposition of tariffs by the U.S. administration under President Donald Trump, have introduced complexities into this long-standing relationship, prompting Canada to reassess and diversify its energy export strategies.
The border.
Trump responded to Ford's threat today, saying this.
Well, that's okay if he does that, that's fine, but the United States is subsidizing Canada. It's truly a subsidy. And we should.
The energy trade between the United States and Canada is characterized by its depth and integration. In 2023, the bilateral energy trade amounted to an impressive $153.7 billion, with Canada purchasing $30 billion in American energy products. This trade is not merely transactional. It underpins millions of jobs, ensures energy security, and fosters economic growth on both sides of the border. Canada's contribution is particularly noteworthy, supplying about 60% of U.S. crude oil imports, over 4 million barrels per day, and accounting for 1/4 of U.S. refineries' daily intake. In the natural gas sector, Canada's dominance is even more pronounced, providing 99% of U.S. natural gas imports annually.
The border.
Trump responded to Ford's threat today, saying this.
Well, that's okay if he does that, that's fine, but the United States is subsidizing Canada. It's truly a subsidy. And we should.
In a move that sent ripples through global markets, President Trump announced the implementation of tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, citing national security concerns. These measures included a 25% tariff on various imports, with Canadian energy resources facing a 10% tariff. The administration's justification centered on addressing issues related to illegal immigration and drug trafficking. However, the economic ramifications were immediate and widespread. Imports such as cars, auto parts, crude oil, electronics, clothing, toys, tequila, and agricultural products including Mexican avocados were poised to see price increases. Industry experts warned that these tariffs could lead to higher costs for U.S. consumers, with car prices potentially rising by $3,000 and increased gas prices.
The disagreement between provinces goes even deeper. Last night, Premier Ford said he is convinced Canada will not escape U.S. tariffs. However, François Legault cited his meeting with Trump last week in Paris.
And he told me very clearly that we can avoid those tariffs if we do what needs to be done with the borders.
Which is the focus of a new announcement from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith today, a team of specially trained Alberta sheriffs that will patrol the border, more than 50 officers, K-9 teams, and cold weather surveillance drones to stop illegal cross-border activity.
If we succeed and maintain proper borders,
The introduction of tariffs disrupted the established equilibrium of the North American energy market. Industry experts warned that these measures could lead to increased costs for U.S. consumers, with gasoline prices potentially rising by 10 to 25 cents per gallon, especially in regions heavily dependent on Canadian crude, such as the Midwest. The automotive sector also faced potential setbacks, with car prices projected to increase by up to $3,000 due to higher costs of imported components.
The largest province. On the gear, they're going to enhance gear, get more border patrol, more sniffer dogs, if you want to call them that, patrol dogs. They're going to make sure they have more drones and more opportunities to cover the border. They have asked us, and I have agreed that we will support them. Again, temporarily, as long as it takes to get through this. But again, we emphasize the border is not our responsibility. Well, I think he's being a little more aggressive than he was in the past. And I say this respectfully to the president. He's a different type of cat, to say the least. Maybe I'm a different type of...
In Massachusetts, the impact was particularly pronounced. The state, heavily reliant on Canadian energy imports, faced the prospect of energy tariffs resulting in hundreds of millions of dollars in additional costs. Specifically, a 25% tariff on petroleum and natural gas imports from Canada was projected to lead to Massachusetts consumers paying $910 million more per year, along with an extra 20 cents per gallon at the pump and for oil deliveries. Faced with these challenges, Canada recognized the imperative to reduce its dependency on the U.S. market by exploring alternative avenues for its energy exports. The Canadian government expressed interest in constructing new oil pipelines to access global markets directly, thereby mitigating the impact of U.S. tariffs. However, these initiatives face significant obstacles, including financial constraints, regulatory approvals, and environmental concerns.
Well, Donnie, you know, there's economists who say dropping internal trade barriers could add billions to Canada's overall GDP. And in the wake of Trump's tariff threats, there is a new urgency to deal with those barriers.
I can tell you, having spoken to a number of premiers, the premiers are ready, the country is ready, businesses are ready.
And that's why Ottawa and the provinces are confident some barriers can be rapidly removed.
So you're going to see these barriers coming down, and there is no need for legislation in order for that to happen.
We are not the enemy.
Talks among the Prime Minister and the Premiers focused on three themes. First,
notably, the Trans Mountain Expansion Project, TMX, has been in operation since May 2024 and has significantly increased the pipeline capacity to Canada's Pacific coast, enabling export to foreign markets. The pipeline runs parallel to the existing 715-mile route between Strathcona County, near Edmonton, and Burnaby, British Columbia, which is Canada's only crude oil pipeline to its west coast. The expansion project aims to enhance the capacity of the Trans Mountain pipeline system, facilitating the delivery of more crude oil to global markets.
And taking the interests of allies seriously. Donald Trump has completely rejected that idea. He's never believed in it. He doesn't believe in collective security. He believes in domination and being dominated. And he wants the United States to dominate because that's the only relationship he can understand. If you're not dominating, you're being dominated. One of the reasons he identifies so much with America's dictatorial enemies is because they do politics in a way that he understands. Putin isn't the servant of the Russian people. He's the boss of the Russian people. And Donald Trump doesn't like being the servant of the American people. He wants to be the boss of the American people and through them of everybody else.
What sort of scenarios do you think Canadians should be bracing for?
Canadians should be braced for a lot of tariff aggression. Although a tariff is a tax,
The Keystone XL pipeline project exemplifies the challenges faced by cross-border energy infrastructure projects. Initially proposed to transport up to 830,000 barrels of crude oil per day from Alberta, Canada to U.S. Gulf Coast refineries, the project encountered numerous legal, environmental, and political hurdles. Despite initial approvals, the project was ultimately halted, underscoring the intricate dynamics of energy politics and environmental advocacy. This case highlights the complexities involved in expanding energy infrastructure, particularly when balancing economic interests with environmental and social considerations.
Between Canada and the U.S., and we want to continue that. We want to make sure that we build a Can-Am fortress, per se, if you want to call it that. And the real focus should be on China. It should be on Mexico China bringing in cheap products through Mexico, slapping stickers that say made in Mexico and shipping it up through America into Ontario and Canada and costing Americans and Canadians jobs. That's what we should focus on. We're so much stronger.
The evolving trade tensions and infrastructural challenges have broader implications for North American energy security. The interdependence between the U.S. and Canada in the energy sector has been a cornerstone of regional stability. Disruptions to this relationship could lead to supply uncertainties, increased prices, and a reevaluation of energy strategies by both nations. The potential for retaliatory tariffs further exacerbates these concerns, as they could lead to increased costs for U.S. consumers and industries. The U.S. stands to lose economically, with retaliatory tariffs from other countries on American products, potentially harming sectors like agriculture.
Well, a lot of people say there's a big difference between your country and China, and that they're kind of lumped in the same tariff bucket. What do you think?
Well, I think it's unfortunate considering Canada does $1.3 trillion of trade, more than China, Japan, UK, and France combined. Ontario alone does $500 billion of two-way trade. And I might add, it's equally split down the center. And we're a big auto province here, and it's parts can go back and forth across the border up to 8 times. So the supply chain is very...
As the global energy landscape continues to evolve, the United States and Canada face critical decisions regarding their energy policies and trade relations. Collaborative efforts to address mutual challenges, diversify energy sources, and invest in sustainable infrastructure will be essential to maintaining economic stability and energy security in the region. Both nations stand to benefit from a strengthened partnership that leverages their respective strengths and resources.
For people's views on this subject and the individual personalities, the president-elect says that tariffs are the sweetest word to him. They're very effective. They can be used as a cudgel to get what you want out of those who you feel are taking advantage of you. But you can also go too far with these things, and other countries reciprocate with tariffs of their own, and it builds on itself. Do you think that this could really explode into a global recession if it gets out of hand?
Well, I hope not, Neil, because you can't compare Canada with any other country in the entire world when it comes to the U.S. We're part of the family, per se. We're the #1 trading partner, Ontario.
The future of North American energy trade will depend on how both nations adapt to the shifting landscape. Canada has already begun strengthening ties with Europe and Asia, reducing its dependence on U.S. markets. The completion of projects like the Trans Mountain expansion will further increase Canada's ability to supply crude oil to global markets, while ongoing discussions about expanding liquefied natural gas exports to Asia are gaining momentum.
Basing at the time. Chrystia Freeland's going to put a list together. We're going to put our list together, and I'm sure the other provinces will as well. But we will go to the full extent, depending how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State, and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen, but my #1 job is to protect Ontario, Ontarians and Canadians as a whole, since we're the largest province. On the gear, they're going to enhance gear, get more border patrol, more sniffer dogs, if you want to call them that, patrol dogs.
For the United States, the challenge is twofold: maintaining energy security while navigating economic and political tensions. If Canada continues shifting its energy exports elsewhere, the U.S. may need to increase domestic oil production or secure new trade agreements to stabilize supply chains. However, such measures take time and investment, leaving the country vulnerable to market volatility.
Increased prices.
It's why even American lobby groups like the American Petroleum Institute have been calling for the U.S. president to leave oil out of its tariff plans. Dropping energy tariffs to 10% may feel like a modest win, but it won't go far to counter the country's economic pain.
The Alberta oil and gas sector is not strong enough, big enough, relative to the size of the Canadian economy as a whole, that even if the oil and gas continues to flow, that it's going to save Canada from a recession.
Ottawa has said that when it comes to countermeasures, everything remains on the table.
In the coming months, both governments will need to decide whether to escalate the energy standoff or work toward a cooperative solution. The stakes are high, and the decisions made now will shape North America's energy future for decades to come.